Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Before the video can go underway, I just want to give a brief outline and explanation as to why I delayed this Halloween special for up to almost a month. And basically, I'm just going to cut straight to it. In September, I went through a horrible period in my personal life. My marriage broke down and I had to make a lot of life changes as it happened suddenly, and I just went through hell basically for the last 2 months. So it interfered with everything I had planned, it interfered with everything I was doing in my personal life, it interfered with everything I was doing in my professional life, it interfered with everything I was doing with this. I just put everything on hold and I didn't know when I was going to come back. I still don't know when I'm going to come back properly, but I did say to myself that once I got better, I was going to come back and finish this particular review, which was supposed to release on the 31st of October 2022. So this is actually supposed to be the Halloween special of the year. It's a little bit outdated in the sense that the location which I am situated in on camera is not the same place I am in now, as you will see in a second. I've moved country, I've moved back to Scotland, and I'm restarting my life from scratch. And it's been 2 months and I'm now in a better place than I was, and that's one of the reasons I decided to go back and finish this review. So if this is your first time here, then you've got a great backstory as to why, and if you've already been here before, I'm pretty sure you've already got a rough idea as to why it took this long to get this video uploaded. It would have been a longer time if not for the fact that I didn't realise how much better I was going to get in the space of 2 months. I've still got a lot of work to do up here, but I'm improving. So with that said, thanks very much for taking the time to watch this video, if you end up watching it. And I'll see you whenever I see you. Stay safe, take care, sit back and relax. Enjoy.
2 years ago, I covered Manhunt, and I knew going into it that it wasn't a traditional horror game, but due to its undertones, I felt that it was still a valid topic for a Halloween video. The same can be said about this game I'm going to cover today.
This game isn't a horror game. It doesn't have any jump scares, nor does it have any traditional horror game elements. The game is a stealth action game set in medieval France. But the reason I have chosen this game specifically is because it does contain something that I find particularly creepy. Something that unsettles me to the nth degree.
So let's not waste much time. Welcome back to GB Reviews, where on this year's Halloween special I am taking a look at A Plague Tale: Innocence.
Go away, get out, where is he? Get the fuck out. Ah! Fuck, right, that's it, I'm done.
Released in 2019, A Plague Tale: Innocence launched on PC, PS4 and Xbox One, before eventually being ported to PS5, Series X and S, and via the cloud on the Nintendo Switch in 2021. It was developed by ASOBO Studios, the same team behind the 2020 edition of Microsoft Flight Simulator. This would also be their third game released on PS4 behind Monopoly Plus and The Crew 2. It was also published by Focus Home Interactive.
Just run as fast as you can!
They're running away!
Kill the sister! Run! Take the boy alive! You'll pay in the end! You must protect him, Amicia.
A Plague Tale: Innocence takes place in 14th century France during the 100 Years' War, and if you're not well up on your history here, let me tell you what else happened during this period. Between the years of 1346 and 1353, a bubonic plague pandemic spread across Europe and North Africa, as well as some parts of Western Asia, infamously known as the Black Death. The Black Death was apparently the worst pandemic ever to happen, killing up to 200 million people overall. So what caused the Black Death? It is known to have come from a pesticide known as Xenopsilla chaopis. I think I pronounced that properly. And where did this pesticide reside? Rodents. What's one of my biggest fears? Fucking rodents. Rats, hamsters, mice, all of that crap. Nothing that small should be able to move that fast. It's not so much that they scare me. Like, I can handle seeing one on TV. I don't have a genuine phobia. But I look at rodents the same way most people looks at spiders and creepy crawlies. They're unpleasant, disgusting, and they make me cringe, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere near one. I digress. So, the Black Death is, let's say, a rather frequent topic in A Plague Tale: Innocence. I'm just going to let you know that if you have not played this, but plan to, and don't want to hear any spoilers, then consider this your spoiler warning before you continue on with this review. Let's press on. So I went into this game expecting it to be an adventure game not dissimilar to that of Heavy Rain or any of the Telltale games, and I had that presumption for a while. I reckon I was probably getting the game mixed up with the Dark Pictures anthology. I suppose you can't really blame me, as both games were released in the same year, and both of them had predominantly white backgrounds on the front cover, with a character or two in the middle. A Plague Tale is actually a third-person action game that puts a heavy emphasis on stealth in its gameplay. You play as a 15-year-old girl called Amicia, and at the beginning of the game she accompanies her father and pet dog on a hunting trip. Things take a turn for the worst, as she notices something odd on the ground, which eventually leads to her dog getting killed by an unknown entity. She eventually flees home to find French Inquisition soldiers and a man named Lord Nicholas searching for Amicia's younger, sick brother, Hugo. Their father is then executed and their mother helps them escape, with instructions for Amicia to take Hugo to a doctor named Laurentius. Up until this point, the game seems fairly straightforward. You find yourself running and or hiding from soldiers for most of the first couple of chapters until you reach a nearby village. You start to find out gradually that people have been dying from a plague that people refer to as the Bite. Since I already explained to you what this plague was, you can pretty much imagine. Amicia and Hugo eventually find themselves in a church where a priest leads them out the back door, and on their way out, this happens.
No.
Absolutely no fucking way! Right, I've got Prosecco and I've got Gordon's gin. Hopefully, if I drink enough of these, they will start to look like cuddly toys. So, yeah, that happened. This is disgusting. So this is the first time that we get to see the rats at this scale, and it scared the ever-living shite out of me, to say the least. So after this brief introduction, Amicia and Hugo make their way to Laurentius, and there were plenty of rats asunder on the way. And upon finding Laurentius, they discover that he is ill and has contracted the plague. And Laurentius instructs Amicia to go and find a cure for Hugo's illness, which was only half completed by their mother. And they do not get to leave the farm quick enough before more rats show up. So now the farm is overrun by these goddamn fucking rats. And it's from this point on where the game becomes increasingly interesting. As disgusting as it looks, to me anyway, this is a rather impressive mechanic the developers have brought in here. one that I've very seldom seen before. You know, it's actually quite funny. I did actually see the rats at the main menu, but I honestly never made a single connection. I thought they were like background 3D models or something like that. Like, I didn't think that they were actually in the goddamn game as a literal thing you have to avoid that can maul you at a moment's notice. Oh yeah, this game pulls no punches. It kind of reminds me of the Krill from Gears of War. In fact, they're almost exactly the same idea, in that the rats will only attack you if you are in a dark area with no light. Light makes them move away, just like the aforementioned Krill from Gears of War, which are eviscerated when light is shone on them. Once I got over the heebie-jeebies, I eventually got used to the rats being in the game. So by this point, players will have figured out what caused Amicia's dog to get killed. I'm mentioning this because it took me ages to put two and two together, because I thought maybe there was something else that wasn't yet introduced that caused the dog to die. But nope, the rats are what emerge from the ground, and aside from soldiers, they are the biggest enemy. They're the biggest puzzle. And I'm not going to go on too much about the story, as even though I said that there were going to be some spoilers, I was only referring to the opening sections and the inclusion of the rats, in case anyone else ends up being as dumb as me that while I knew there were rats in the game in some way, I thought that they were a background element. Like, just a theme set around the plot. They're not. They're really not. They're a big part of the game. So let's talk gameplay. How does A Plague Tale: Innocence control? What do you do? Well, I've already mentioned that the first opening sections of the game involve you hiding from soldiers, running away from them, so on and so forth. But let's not forget that Amicia carries a slingshot, and this becomes her main method of attack. As you progress through the game, you gain more ammo types, and you can also upgrade your abilities at a workbench similar to games like The Last of Us. Side note, if you're definitely going to play this, I urge you to work your way to getting the second Atarail skill, which completely eliminates the need to use a workbench to upgrade your kit. It means you'll be able to upgrade your equipment on the fly provided you have the correct materials without needing a workbench at all. The same goes with the third Atarail skill, which removes the need for toolkits as a required material. I digress. The slingshot is pretty much the only weapon Amicia can use, and I also mentioned that your choice of ammo types are increased the more you play, and these can range from your standard pebble, which is still lethal in that it can take enemies out in one hit, provided they're not wearing any helmets, to more creative ammunition like the ignifer, which is mostly used for lighting up braziers and the like in order to light up an area. You can also use projectiles like the Devorantis, which can be used to burn through a soldier's helmet, forcing them to remove it, giving you a clear shot to hit them in the head. Luminosa is used to annihilate rats on impact and disperse any others that are nearby. There is also Odorous, which will cause rats to scamper towards it and is useful for drawing rats to enemies when thrown at them. And then we have the Extinguish, which is used for putting out fires. You would think that this would be a counterproductive measure, but it becomes useful if you want rats to mobilise towards an enemy that is carrying a light source. Extinguishing that light will automatically draw the rats to them. The only lethal weapon that doesn't require a slingshot and can only be used in close quarters is the Somnum, or Somnem, I can't really pronounce it, but it fundamentally serves to knock soldiers unconscious. You're not always going to need weapons to avoid enemies, however. If there is a nearby stack of armour, you can fire a rock at them to distract enemies, allowing you to pass by them safely. You can also use any pots nearby and toss them to achieve the same thing. Be careful though, as trying to distract the same enemy multiple times will cause them to increase their awareness and begin actively looking for where the noise is coming from. It's a clever mechanic thrown in that discourages players from using cheap tactics. There isn't much in the way of combat, however, as if you are caught by an enemy, it's an instant game over. Enemies do not repeatedly hit you until you die. This is a one-hit dead sort of deal. So it's within your best interest to play as stealthily as possible. After all, you're playing as a vulnerable, mortal 15-year-old girl. Turning her into Ellie from The Last of Us would be a little silly given the circumstances. Let's also not forget Hugo, Amicia's brother. You've probably at some point thought to yourself, oh no, this game is a 10-hour escort mission. I assure you, it's not. Yes, you do drag Hugo around with you for most of the game, but he is not a burden in any way. He doesn't get lost, he doesn't wander, he doesn't get in the way of anything. He is completely stuck to you until you tell him to stay put. If you go too far, the game will not let you proceed, or it'll be game over. Once you call Hugo back to you, it's immediate. At no point did I ever feel like Hugo was a nuisance, which I was worried about the moment I had to bring that child along. Hugo is an integral part of the story, and I really don't want to spoil anything here. That's definitely something you'll want to discover yourself. I will say this though, there is a reason why Hugo was being hunted by soldiers at the start of the game, that's all I'm saying. Moving on. It's not without its fair share of collectibles either. Throughout your playthrough, you'll find little trinkets and items known as herbariums, curiosities, gifts, and alchemist carts, the latter of which provide you with a plethora of materials to grab, as well as a workbench. Not a collectible in the traditional sense, but finding them all is required if you want to get all the trophies and achievements for the game, which I didn't, because sometimes I just don't care about collectibles, and that's all it boils down to for me. Collectibles in games nowadays are nothing more than useless cosmetic nonsense that are only there to help you earn an achievement or a trophy. A feature that not everyone pays attention to, so unless you're a trophy hunter, they are not worth the effort. With regards to A Plague Tale though, I will say some of them do contextualise the world in some way. The Curiosity collectibles are by far the most interesting, for example, as they provide a snippet of lore that, as I said, help build the world you're in. Personally, I prefer my lore in games told through verbal exposition, be it voice memos or random NPCs, but I'm getting into RPG territory with that wish, so I'll accept what they've given here. There are also herbariums, which are various different flowers you can collect as well. These serve to broaden the story of the two siblings. It's probably one of very few times Amicia and Hugo exchange dialogue to each other in solitude, so they do provide a little touching moment of back and forth between them.
They're carnations. We had some in my herbarium, but those ones are prettier.
Hugo, we have to keep moving.
Wait, come here.
What?
It will protect you, and is pretty too.
Oh. Alright.
Now we can go.
Thank you, Hugo.
You're welcome.
I just realised I'm slowly contradicting myself when I said that collectibles serve little purpose in modern games, when I've just pointed out that they make perfect sense in this one. So consider this a rare occurrence because it's not always like this. Take Limbo and Inside for example. Those two games are fantastic, but the collectibles are only there for the sake of unlocking achievements. They provide nothing else. No lore, no context, nothing. I beat Limbo on the Nintendo Switch a few years ago and I didn't even bother looking for any of the collectibles at all, because there is no achievement system within the console and there are no rewards, so they end up being completely pointless. I realise I'm going on and on and on about this topic on collectibles, so I won't bore you with further details. Let's move on. Throughout the game, you'll meet new characters along the way. I will say that the side characters are one of the weaker aspects of the game for me. Personally, I found them to be pretty forgettable and uninteresting. I did not grow attached to a single character outside of the main protagonists, which is a shame, because overall the story of A Plague Tale: Innocence is absolutely brilliant. It's dark, depressing, foreboding, and just tonally horrific. The voice acting was performed brilliantly, and the audio itself was well done. And let's not forget the music. My god, this game has some of the best scores I've ever heard. If you haven't, go listen to the soundtrack for this game. It's absolutely brilliant.
I won't ask again. Where is your son?
Amicia!
You have no idea. Leave while you still can.
Kill the sister! Take the boy alive!
Must protect him.
Are you stupid or what? I am not stupid!
The voice acting was performed brilliantly by a range of up-and-coming great talent such as Charlotte McBurney and Logan Hannon as Amicia and Hugo respectively.
He won't listen to you! We need to stop him!
Will we never see Mummy again?
As well as slightly better known actor Mark Healy, who voices Vernon Roach from the Witcher series. Overall, the voice acting was really well done, and I hope to see these actors get more roles beyond this series. And let's not leave out the audio itself, which was also very well done. The 3D audio is implemented incredibly well here, and despite the fact that the game has tremendous English voice acting, might I also suggest that you try the game out entirely in French.
Vous êtes inconscient. Partez tant que vous le pouvez. Tuez la sœur. Prenez le garçon vivant.
Tu dois le protéger.
If you want a bit of authenticity, this is definitely something to try out. But if it's not your thing though, it's absolutely, totally 100% fine. As I already said, the English voice acting is superb. They're not as Americanised as you'd think either. Almost everyone here speaks in a French dialect, even when they're speaking English. So it's very well thought out in that department. A nice touch of realism. And what about the music? The soundtrack was composed by Olivier de Rivière, who also composed the music for other titles such as Remember Me, Vampire, Dying Light 2 and also Streets of Rage 4. And my god, this game has some of the best scores I have ever heard. If you haven't, go listen to the soundtrack for this game. De Rivière does a fantastic job capturing the tone and feel as well as the overall bleak atmosphere of the game and its world. It's absolutely remarkable. A Plague Tale Innocence is also a pretty damn stunning looking game as well. I can't say how it looked on PS4, because I didn't actually play it on that console, but the PS5 port looked amazing. Despite the fact it renders at a 1440p resolution, the atmosphere and texture quality alone makes it barely noticeable, and at 60 frames per second with barely any dips save for one or two instances, it's a visual marvel. At least for me it was, and also a technical one. Like I said, I played this on PS5. So with that came the obvious improvements: adaptive triggers, haptic feedback, improved load times, and 3D audio as well. And I want to point out the 3D audio because it was absolutely amazing to listen to, especially when listening on my newly acquired HyperX Cloud Alpha wireless headphones. I just wanted an excuse to bring them up. I love these headphones so much, they are absolutely brilliant. Fuck you, Turtle Beach, you absolutely suck. I digress. But from what I've read and heard, A Plague Tale Innocence is a brilliant experience no matter what console you play it on. So I'm coming to the end of this rather brief review, a lot shorter than what my usual reviews are. But I'm ending it on a positive opinion. A Plague Tale Innocence was a pleasant surprise for me. If I had one negative, I would say it maybe felt like it went on a little longer than I was expecting. But it didn't completely outstay its welcome. If I was bothered to give this game a score, I would have given it a 9 out of 10, but since I really don't like giving out scores, I'm not going to solidify that, as my opinion could change down the line. But as it stands, right now, I recommend you give this game a shot. And it's the perfect time too, as the sequel, A Plague Tale Requiem, has just released. So with that said, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this review. I'm sorry it was a lot shorter than what I'm used to doing, but I really wanted to get a review out, and A Plague Tale Innocence is fresh in my mind, and it was a perfect time to play it as well. So with that said, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch it, and if you enjoyed it, you know exactly what to do. This has been Dave talking to you on GB Gaming, where video games come first. Thanks again, and I will see you on the next one. Stay safe, and happy Halloween.